I never thought I'd find myself bawling my eyes out over an episode of Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures. Barbie as a character completely caught me off guard. It's a kids' show, well, technically for general audiences, but heavily targeted towards children, and I didn't expect to relate to her in any way. But somehow, I found myself relating to her in ways I never expected, and it's been a long time since I've felt this kind of connection to a character. I can't emphasize enough how much fun I had watching it. The show radiates so much love and care for its characters, and that kind of genuine effort is truly admirable. That said, it's not without its flaws, and I want to dive into some of my thoughts on the latest updates to Barbie's world, focusing particularly on the characters, especially in Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures. If you haven't kept up with Barbie lately, allow me to give you a quick rundown. We are all familiar with the classics era from early 2000s to 2010. This period is characterized by Barbie starring in adaptations of classic fairy tales, literature, and ballets. The film often features princesses, fairies, and magical adventures, such as Barbie and the Nutcracker, Barbie of Swan Lake, Barbie as Rapunzel, etc. Then to modern-day plots from 2010 to 2015, which focused on a mix of contemporary settings and adventurous themes, often featuring Barbie as a character who empowers others and goes on exciting journeys. This era saw a shift towards more relatable, modern-day stories, while still keeping elements of magic and fantasy, such as Barbie Charm School, Barbie Pearl Princess, Barbie Mariposa, etc. And I think where Barbie somehow lost a little bit of momentum is in 2015, with Barbie Rock'n'Royal being the last of this era and the discontinuation of the web series Barbie Life in a Dreamhouse. From 2015 to 2017, Barbie underwent a rebrand aimed at making her more relatable. The focus shifted to Barbie as herself, rather than portraying her as other characters in films. This allowed us to get a closer look at her personality, her friends, and her family, while also exploring her interests. The timing of this rebrand was perfect, as Barbie made her debut as a vlogger on YouTube in mid-2015, right when influencer culture was kicking off, with a full rebranding effort following later that year. I remember seeing a few clips from that time, and I thought they were really cute and fun. From late 2015 through 2016 and into the first part of 2017, Barbie went through an awkward phase, leaning more towards adventure-themed stories. We saw films like Barbie and her sisters in the Great Puppy Adventure, Barbie Spy Squad, Barbie Starlight Adventure, Barbie and her sisters in a puppy chase, which is completely different from the previous puppy adventure I just mentioned, Barbie Video Game Hero, and Barbie Dolphin Magic. During this time, Mattel experimented with new storylines, animation styles, and visuals, but none of these films really resonated with me. It's worth mentioning, around this time, Mattel was going through some financial challenges as they tried finding their footing in a rapidly changing market. Then from 2017 to 2024, we had a rise in Barbie content again, with Mattel embracing streaming services, Barbie stepping into the role of an influencer, Barbie Life in a Dreamhouse trending again, and not to forget the live-action film that was released in 2023. Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures comes out in 2018, concludes in 2020 with 5 seasons. If you check Netflix, you'll see it lists 3 seasons, but there's also Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures Go Team Roberts, a continuation with 2 additional seasons. After that, we got Barbie Princess Adventures, a movie that didn't make much of an impact, at least to me. It's essentially Princess and the Pauper once again, but this time between a princess and an influencer. Then came Barbie Big City, Big Dreams in 2021, which was a significant movie in the Barbie franchise. More on that later. This later inspired the TV series Barbie It Takes Two. After that, there were about 4 more movies that didn't really catch my interest, and their latest release, Barbie Mysteries The Great Horse Chase, which is a TV series that premiered in late 2024. I'll have a few comments on that later, but for now, you are caught up with Barbie. Let's dive into Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures and take a closer look at some of the key characters. Let's start with Barbie's parents. They are amazing. Her mom, Margaret, is everything I aspire to be: innovative, smart, and she even designed the whole system for the dream house. Then there's her dad, George, who is equally fun to watch. He's creative, caring, and full of awful jokes that somehow makes him even more lovable. Both of them are engaging, realistic, and don't feel like background parents who are just there because they need to be. Instead, they really contribute to the dynamics of Barbie's life, and I really enjoy watching them. Skipper is the second eldest and has a strong passion for music, technology, and she is good at programming. She's also an amazing babysitter. She tends to be messy sometimes, not drama messy. She's the type of person who gets things done, but only after making a mess and figuring it out along the way. Skipper often compares herself to Barbie, seeing her as the perfect role model. She aspires to be as perfect as Barbie, but along the way, she learns an important lesson: the value of being herself and appreciating her own identity and contributions. Chelsea, sweet Chelsea, she is the youngest, the very definition of a sweet cinnamon roll. She's incredibly imaginative and creative with a love for storytelling. She is a prankster at heart. She loves pranks. She brings a playful energy to everything she does. Her charm is undeniable. She's endearing and so sweet, and I really love her. Stacy is the third youngest and has a strong passion for sports. She's incredible at coaching and loves helping others, always looking out for those around her. She has a natural leadership personality, and I find her great with management. She's also messy, and this time I mean hygienically. She loves a mess. While I appreciate Stacy's helpful and driven nature, I did have a hard time connecting with her as a character at first. We don't always get a glimpse into her thoughts, which made it difficult to relate. Also, I never quite saw her as the type to stay indoors as much as she does, but that does change in the last 2 seasons. But I still feel like her personality is a little bit underdeveloped. And then we have Barbie's friends. I love her friends. We have Teresa, who's gifted with analytical skills and loves data analysis, math and science, and technology. She's also bilingual. Then there's Nikki, who is into fashion and aspires to be a fashion designer. She's very entrepreneurial. Owning 2 businesses, Go Bistro, her scooter-based food business, and Watkins Wolf's her pet care business. I love that for her. Renee is into sports, particularly basketball and skating. And finally, there's Daisy, who loves music and aspires to be a DJ. I find them really nice and sweet. Then there's Ken, who is still Ken, but better. He's thoughtful, helpful, still very much Ken. He's Barbie's childhood best friend and neighbor, and in this version, he's a bit more well-rounded. He loves the beach and sea animals and aspires to be a lifeguard. There's this surprising moment where he has a crush on a character named Harriet, and I honestly didn't know how to feel about it at first. It was unexpected, but added an interesting layer to his character. The crush was short-lived and one-sided, I think. But now that I think about it, I'm not sure if it was truly a crush or if Ken just had trouble asking a girl to a dance. It definitely did add some depth to him though. Then we have Tammy Bounce Away. She's an influencer and pretty much cut from the same cloth as Raquel. Self-absorbed, hates Barbie, becomes obsessed with her, and competes with her. There's even an entire episode where she tries to copy Barbie by becoming Barbie herself. I really enjoyed that episode because it brought out an interesting side of Barbie. Watching Barbie question herself and reflect on what makes her who she is was a compelling moment. It was a cool twist, showing that even someone as confident as Barbie can have doubts, especially when someone like Tammy, Bounce Away, challenges her identity. What I really like about Tammy though is that she's quick-witted and smart. There's one episode where Barbie and Tammy are on the same team in a school competition, and I enjoyed seeing how Tammy's sharp mind made things interesting. It was also nice seeing Barbie and Tammy eventually become friends. There's nothing I love more than seeing 2 strong personalities coming together, and their friendship was a really satisfying moment. Then we have Trey Reardon, Barbie's neighbor who doesn't like Barbie or her family at all. He kind of reminds me of Ryan in the sense that he's self-absorbed. Trey's dream is to go viral and become an internet sensation, and he's got that typical mix of arrogance and confidence. But as the show goes on, Trey's character becomes more layered and nuanced. His relationship with his parents can be pretty strained. They're overbearing, selfish, and even dismissive at times. Neglectful, actually. This really affects Trey, and the show leaves room for the audience to interpret that his need to go viral might be his way of seeking attention. His confident exterior could be masking his insecurities about not being the smartest or not being taken seriously. Over time, we see Trey grow and develop a more authentic confidence in himself, his abilities, and his personal interests. I genuinely love this character. I think he's the best character in the show. The way they've developed him, showing there's more to him than just the typical self-absorbed guy, is really impressive. And finally, Barbie. She's still perfect, but that perfection comes with a flaw. She tends to take on too much responsibility and overcommits herself. Barbie's incredibly optimistic and driven, always believing she can solve every problem and help everyone. But that sometimes leads to her spreading herself too thin, causing unintentional chaos despite her best intentions. There's an episode where Barbie learns how to ask for help, recognizing the importance of relying on others when needed. Another flaw is her occasional difficulty stepping back and letting others take charge. Barbie has this natural leadership and a can-do attitude that sometimes makes her take over situations when she could benefit from trusting others more. A perfect example of this is when Skipper takes on babysitting for the first time, and Barbie doesn't trust her to handle it on her own. These traits highlight her imperfections and make her growth throughout the series feel much more relatable and grounded. We also see her quit something for the first time, basketball. Despite her efforts, she just can't get the hang of it. We also get to see her being a little unreasonable at times. There's an episode where she feels jealous of Skipper because Skipper spends more time with Barbie's friends than she does, making Barbie feel left out. Skipper calls her out on it, and Barbie learns her lesson, taking responsibility for her actions. I love that. Also, watching Barbie argue with her sisters and not always being the bigger person adds an endearing touch. It reminds me that at the end of the day, she's still a teen. I love how the show lets her younger sisters sometimes be the reasonable ones and express themselves. I also enjoy the vlog-style storytelling, though I still think the reality TV format in Barbie Life in a Dreamhouse holds a special charm. I love her character. Barbie feels like a warm hug. I absolutely love this show, but I had a minor issue with the first 2 seasons. Character differentiation, especially among Barbie's friends. They felt a bit monotoned and too similar in personality and dialogue. I wanted their traits and voices to stand out more, giving them a stronger presence. Things improved by the end of the 3rd season. Nikki became more fleshed out, with a somewhat distinct personality and started appearing more often. Renee stood out in the last 3 episodes of the 3rd season. I adored her in those moments. However, even with these improvements, I think a little extra focus on making Barbie's friends more unique would have added so much. Overall, I'd give Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures an 8 out of 10. As for Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures, go Team Roberts, that's a perfect 10 out of 10. It's more intimate, inviting, and a joy to watch. I highly recommend. I also want to briefly talk about the other Barbie Roberts, and I can't do that without mentioning Barbie Big City Big Dreams, Barbie It Takes Two, and Barbie Mysteries. She's introduced in Barbie Big City Big Dreams, a musical adventure film released in 2021. The story follows Barbie, our Malibu Barbie, leaving Malibu to attend a prestigious performing arts program in New York for the summer. There she meets another girl named Barbie Roberts from Brooklyn, and the two become fast friends. I love Brooklyn Barbie in this film. She's grounded, down to earth, and has that New Yorker vibe. Nothing seems to surprise her, which is how I define the essence of a New Yorker. Her movements have this elegance and poise that enhance her confidence, and she's also vibrant. If I were to contrast her with Malibu Barbie, Brooklyn Barbie is someone who acts boldly and decisively. When she wants something, she dives right in and thinks about the process later. In contrast, Malibu Barbie is more methodical. carefully thinking about the steps before taking action. This contrast between the two makes the dynamic really enjoyable to watch. Again, I really loved Brooklyn Barbie in Big City, Big Dreams, and I was excited to see that she became a permanent part of the franchise. But with her introduction, we start to see a shift where Barbie Malibu becomes a bit different, and honestly, it marks the beginning of a new phase of rebranding that left me a little unsure about where we were going. Let me take you back to character differentiation and Barbie life in a dream house. What I loved about the show was how boldly unique each character was. You could never confuse them, and most importantly, none of them were forgettable. Midge, for instance, was quirky, nostalgic, retro, always ready to try new things and constantly amused by everything. She's just so Midge. Summer was energetic, athletic, adventurous, obsessed with the outdoors, and super competitive. Nikki was fashion-focused, resourceful, outspoken, and the most sensible one of the group. Ryan was goofy, overly confident, and self-absorbed, always bringing in the comedy. Teresa was optimistic, sweet, loving, and a bit absent-minded at times. And then, of course, there's Raquel, who doesn't need any introduction. All the characters on screen were so distinct from one another, and the interactions felt natural, never overshadowing each other or compromising their individuality. Their personalities were so well developed that the animators could easily add in subtle details that perfectly complemented each character. Each one had their own quirks and reacted differently to the same situation, keeping my attention engaged. Every character truly demanded attention, bringing out interesting sides of each other, and most importantly, helping to develop Barbie's character. This in turn made the story feel dynamic. The story was practically writing itself. In Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures, I like Barbie's friends, but I find them one-dimensional at times. While the show tries to highlight their unique traits through dedicated episodes, it sometimes falls into telling rather than showing. Sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. The fashion also doesn't help as the characters lack distinct styles, which leaves them feeling less individualized. On top of that, I find them to often share similar expressions when reacting to the same situation. This issue is particularly with Barbie's friends. They do a great job with Trey, Tammy, Skipper, Chelsea, even Rocky, who is a character that comes in way later. The issue I have with this is that it contributes to a lack of character dynamics, which risks missing valuable opportunities to enhance Barbie as a character. When her friends are portrayed as one-dimensional, it limits the depth of the interactions and risks making Barbie herself feel flat. Instead of being surrounded by individuals with distinct personalities, her friends can come across as minions, supporting her without adding meaningful layers to the stories. Barbie's world is meant to celebrate individuality, creativity, and self-expression. When those closest to her lack these qualities, it feels like we're missing the chance to explore deeper aspects of Barbie's personality. Well-rounded friends could bring out new sides of her, challenging her beliefs, inspiring her, and even creating moments of meaningful conflict or growth. Given they do have an episode or two that they do this, but I still stand with my point. Without these dynamics, Barbie's character development feels limited, and the emotional resonance of the story suffers to some degree. Enters Barbie Roberts from Brooklyn. With her arrival, Malibu Barbie's friends take a step back, appearing less frequently, and honestly, I don't mind. I wasn't particularly attached to them, and it almost feels like all of Malibu's friends have merged into one and manifested as Brooklyn Barbie. Nikki, for example, is very entrepreneurial and into fashion and design, traits mirrored in Brooklyn and her male best friend, Rafa, who is also a fashion designer. Daisy's passion for music aligns with Brooklyn's pursuit of becoming the best singer and dancer, a dream she's actively and successfully chasing. Renee's love of sports parallels Brooklyn's athleticism and interest in sports. Even Teresa's science-focused analytical nature seems to echo in Brooklyn, especially as her personality evolves and she starts to display more analytical traits. While these overlaps are noticeable, I don't mind. Brooklyn Barbie feels like a more consolidated, well-rounded version of the traits her friends once had. She has a vibrancy and depth that draws attention, but it does underscore the lack of individuality Malibu Barbie's original friend group had in comparison. How many times have I said I love Brooklyn Barbie? Seriously, I love her. She brings out sides of Barbie Malibu that I've never seen before. Malibu Barbie becomes more energetic, talks quickly, is so much more expressive. It took me a minute to get used to because she basically ditched all her friends. And I found that quite funny. And that is where things started to get a bit confusing to me. And I couldn't quite put a finger on it until I watched Barbie Mysteries: The Great Horse Chase, an adventure mystery series released in late 2024. In that series, Barbie Malibu is reduced to the classic dumb blonde stereotype. I kid you not. That is probably the worst character assassination I have ever seen, and I was honestly so confused.
I want to rephrase this. Let me rephrase this. Barbie becomes dumbed down. And to go into detail as to why I think that is, look at this picture. What do you think of Barbie's facial expression? Barbie has this exact facial expression throughout. It does not go away. It creeps me out. I don't know what they did with her eyes, and she tends to come close to the screen all the time. She looks spacey, a little bit too excited. It's a bit creepy in my opinion. That is the first reason. Number two, she's too bouncy in her movements that I find some of her movements unnecessary. The adorable problem, if you will. It reminds me of Asha in Wish, and then pair that with the eyes. And number three, the dialogue. Sometimes she would have lines that are meant to be funny, but they're not, and I believe the show is aware of this, and they try to make that funny, but it's not. More than anything, it's confusing and random, especially for Barbie. She is forgetful, she misplaces things, not as often, thank goodness.
What? Cassidy! Oh! Now what? I don't know. I pretended that I didn't speak British. You don't think Tornado got on a different train on her own, do you? Yeah, that's not possible. I heard it as soon as I said it.
She becomes clumsy in a way that's almost ridiculous, like competing with Marinette from Miraculous Ladybug in terms of clumsiness. That makes zero sense to me, especially when you consider how Barbie has always been depicted as athletic, with amazing body coordination. Who is this person? This show has clearly drawn inspiration from the animation style that boomed in 2024, particularly with its backgrounds, which are very reminiscent of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The backgrounds are stunning, and I really appreciate that. But when it comes to clumsiness, in case they're trying to channel Miraculous Ladybug's Marinette, I really hope that's not the case. Marinette is in a league of her own, and her clumsiness is a core part of her personality. It manifests in everything she does, her relationships, decision-making, and communication. It's not just a quirky trait thrown in for laughs. With Barbie, it doesn't feel authentic, and honestly, it doesn't work. Clumsiness doesn't suit Barbie, and it's not something that should be added for comedic effect without considering how it changes the character. And I feel like the issue with the character development stems from a lack of differentiation between Barbie's friends. They don't explore her friendships enough. I generally don't think Mattel had to give up the vibrant, bold tapestry of personalities from Life in a Dreamhouse in the name of relatability. I would love to see more diverse personalities within Barbie's circle. Barbie Brooklyn's character also suffers because she isn't consistent. Sometimes she leans into stereotypes, which can feel limiting. It reminded me of the transformation Claudine from Monster High went through, where her original character became more homogenized over time. There's also this tendency for Brooklyn and Malibu Barbie to bend towards each other's personalities, often making them feel like they're forcing a dynamic rather than letting the characters naturally complement each other. The two of them as a duo often feel awkward and at times strained. I'd love to know Brooklyn as her own person. I want to see her with her own interests, separate from Barbie, Malibu Barbie. Right now, I don't feel like I know her. To be honest, I don't think Malibu Barbie is the type of person to latch onto someone the way she does with Brooklyn. We've never seen her act like this with her friends, ever. I personally don't enjoy the type of friendship dynamic where two people are constantly together without any room to grow or explore their own interests. It feels a bit suffocating, and I would love to see both of them given space to develop individually. I still have some thoughts and opinions on this, but that would dive into other Barbie films in greater detail, and I haven't analyzed them enough to fully articulate my thoughts yet. Maybe that's a conversation for another time. For my closing thoughts, Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures is amazing. I just wish they didn't entirely give up on character differentiation when it came to Barbie's friends and the fashion aspect. Relatability does not come in one aesthetic, and relatability is not the same as realism. There's so much potential for exploring different personalities and individual quirks, and I feel that would even add more depth to the world. I love Barbie around Tammy and Trey and Rocky. Barbie feels like a full individual. With her friends, it's more of like acquaintances speaking. But what do you think? Do you agree that Barbie's friends could use more distinction in their personalities and styles? Or do you think the show balances things just fine? How important is fashion in defining a character for you, especially in a show like this? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one.